here is my next game, and in this position white also took bishop takes f6, recaptured by the pawn. Still, of course, it was possible for black to take by the bishop, and probably this was the best decision. Perhaps white wanted to take the pawn on the b5, making this little combination. And then after a takes and knight takes, white can take also the pawn on the d6. But it's not very dangerous for black. Black will just play king e7, rook h d8 after that, and everything is very good for black. Anyway, I just wanted to play this position with the doubled pawn on the f-file, and that's why I took by the g-pawn. So let's analyze this position. Now it becomes instructive for us. White played bishop h5. This is certainly a correct move, and you should remember it. Why the move bishop h5 is good? As we know, the main target of the white's attack is the weak pawn on h7. And that's why it's necessary for white to blockade this pawn. Otherwise, black could just push it, h5, h4, h3. We have seen it in the previous game. Also, the bishop h5 put pressure on the f7 pawn, and in this particular situation, white is also threatening knight takes e6 using the pin. That's why the bishop on the h5 is really on the right square. Sometimes white can use the queen against the bishop as well. White can play queen h5 in similar situation. Black did castling. At the first sight, maybe it looks like a dangerous decision because the black's pawn structure is already broken and it seems like white will attack. However, as we already know, it's not that much dangerous. At any time, black can play king h8, then rook g8, and everything is fine. You may just try to imagine how white will develop his attack. Really, what white can do? Okay, maybe he will play rook e3, rook h3. What he needs to do then? Okay, maybe queen d2, queen h6, and then he will need to move the bishop back from h5. You see that white needs to make a lot of moves just trying to attack the h7 pawn. While for black it's enough to play king h8, rook g8, and his kingside position is well protected. That's why, in fact, this position is not dangerous for black, and white has no real chances for a successful attack on the kingside. Okay, let's see what happened in the game. White played f4, knight c4, the b2 pawn is hanging, b3, knight d6. Now the white c3 knight is under an attack, queen d3, rook c8. Black is attacking the c3 knight again, knight e2, and black played king h8. Now you can see an interesting thing. Due to the black's active position and due to the black's two bishops advantage, white has no real possibilities for an attack. Quite the contrary, black became an attacking side, and now black is going to attack on the king side. Black is going to use the g-file to attack the white's king. So, well, this is really an interesting situation, because white took on the f6 trying to attack there. And finally it appeared that white only helped black to use the g-file to develop an attack against the white's king. And then white played bishop f3, rook g8, king h1, queen c5. Still you can see that black is controlling the situation, and still you can see that for lack of the dark square bishop in white's position, black can occupy all the dark squares and put the strong pressure on the dark squares in the white's position. And this is always very unpleasant for white. In the game, white tried to play e5, trying to do something active. Otherwise, it's pretty difficult to imagine what white can do. And the white's move f5 doesn't create any problems for black. Black can play queen e5, and he will also put the queen on the dominating position in the center. Okay, in the game white played e5, however, it opens the position for black's pieces, for black's bishops and rooks, And after this exchange and rook d8, black got a huge activity. Queen e4, f5, then knight d5. Again, black is using the g file very effectively. After queen h5 and queen f2, white just resigned. Black is attacking the g2 square, and white has no sufficient defense.